So remember, not left versus right. It's actually the people versus the elites. So we all need to get out of that thinking because that's actually where they control us. So, I know that if you're more conservative leaning, the left seemed like a really big deal. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that any tactics that they used for on the right when they were in power, the right is now using on the left. So it's the exact same thing. It's the same dog and pony show. So we don't want to get too bound up in that because we have a bigger fight, unfortunately, for us. So I thought that was interesting. I also wanted to make sure everyone knew Tucker Carlson is being talked about. And seriously, you have to go to Congress and talk about a journalist? I think that's crazy. Why would we all be on to talk about? Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. And then I think there's a really good video. We're going to talk about the Iran war and why is Pete Hegseth Secretary of War. This goes right into what we were talking about. So I'm going to pull this video up. Let me know if you can hear it. Open link, new tab. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
That's the Secretary of War right now.
Watch Tucker Carlson realize why the Zionist lobby, led by Norm Coleman of the Republican Jewish Coalition, pressured Trump to install Pete Hegseth as U.S. Secretary of War.
What is going on here? It's enough to make the hair on your arms go up. Did everyone know there was an effort to rebuild the Third Temple and the foundation stone except me? This is considered so esoteric and weird and crypto-historical and religious and kind of culty and what's Chabad and that no one ever mentions it. But here's Pete Hegseth, football player from Princeton, going on about it in a way that suggests he's thought a lot about it. This is 2018.
And it got me thinking about another miracle that I hope all of you don't see too far away. Because 1917 was a miracle, 1948 was a miracle, 1967 was a miracle, 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle, and there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the TempleMount is not possible. I don't know how it would happen, you don't know how it would happen, but I know that it could happen.
What is that? That's the Secretary of War right now, overseeing the war with Iran that people fighting it are starting to say actually is about rebuilding this Third Temple. It's the same man.
He makes a great point. And I don't know if you guys ever saw that. I never saw Pete Hegseth. This is how the media manipulates you. He'll go on and talk to all these donors, talk to anyone who would put him in power. And we never see it till after the fact. We never see it till it's too late. And that's why independent media is so important, because at least somebody will play it. And Tucker just put it out there that our Secretary of War has been gunning a Zionist agenda for a very long time. Also, I was curious when he was talking about 1917. That's around the time the Federal Reserve came to be. Anybody know what he was talking about there? And he listed off like a bunch of years and dates, and I'm thinking, agree with you here, Zero. I'm not for oppression. However, the only minority group I am against are billionaire PDFs. Yeah, PDFs in general, get out. So it goes to show the fact that we cannot prosecute any of these PDFs is crazy. Like, that tells us who is important in our society and who isn't. The people with money are, and the children aren't. It's so sick. Are we ever going to get justice for these children? I mean, come on. And also, they run all of our money systems. That just drives me bonkers in a way that nothing ever could. I can't wait till we can change back to Secretary of Defense. That'll be crucial. Yes, Mike. That was like a alarm bell for me too. When his name changed to Secretary of War and they were talking about building up our military again, kicking out every DEI person, making sure everyone was enlisting. That's because they want all able-bodied men who would be able to defend our homeland to send them off to another land. What are you going to do when they're all gone and somebody attacks us here? Wow, sounds like a setup to me. I mean, seriously? Couldn't have been more clear, but hindsight is so 2020. And it's kind of depressing because it's like, oh my God, we literally walked right into this. And they were just playing in our faces, it felt like. That's Pete Hegseth. I don't know what else to say. I didn't have any feelings about him coming in. Yeah, let's say it. Yes. It's even more sickening that we can't say the word PDF without being, yes, it's true. Why are we protecting that word? Why are we protecting any of our speech? I find that very interesting. Also, I forgot to mention this on that video with Zach Costello. He was talking about how Charlie Kirk was getting an award because of his defense for liberty. Liberty when I read about the Zionist agenda, was basically a way to make people feel like they had more control of their country than they really did. And that was a term put into our vernacular and part of our constitution by Zionists, which is really crazy. But when I read this book that I'm reading, and I'm not going to name it, but if you find out what I'm talking about, you'll know. Basically, they use that word like and laugh in our faces. They're like, liberty. That's such an open interpretation word, and you can always play with the word liberty. So when it was someone who's a Zionist giving Charlie Kirk a Liberty Award, it's kind of a slap in the face because in their culture, they don't believe that liberty is actually real. And it's so weird. But like that, I know I sound crazy saying it, but I read it and that's how they feel. They literally are laughing in our faces when we're talking about liberty. They're like, what is liberty? No, that's just a word we threw out there. So creepy. Okay. Meanwhile, 1917 was the year Tsar Nicholas II and his family were murdered where Russian changed hands. Okay, you are right. That was one of the worst times. So the Zionists were caught saying that Russia was their biggest enemy and their biggest detractor from being able to take over and cause globalism. So the reason Russia is still our number one enemy is because it's Zionist's number one enemy. It's the people who fund Israel's number one enemy. So the Jerusalem Post reports strange behavior from various levels of command on that fateful day. Read the article, Benjamin Netanyahu, IDF chief delayed Israel's response to October 7th. Yes, I've seen that. Charlie Kirk talked about that, actually. He had a lot of questions about what happened on that day because Israel is a surveillance state. It's not like it is here, which we kind of are a surveillance state, but not like that. They have cameras literally everywhere around their whole border. There's IDF soldiers everywhere. It's basically impossible. So when I say if we were to ever fall under the thumb of Israel, we would be heavily surveyed, and they have the best tech in the world. So on top of all of the crap we already know about them, that would be ushering in surveillance state. And we're almost there. I mean, with the Palantir stuff and all that crap. You don't sound crazy. This whole thing feels like we're all being constantly drilled. We are. They laugh in our faces. You heard what Jeffrey Epstein said. I'm going to say it and bleep it. I'm trying to think of how I can say it. I'm just going to say it. Goyim deal in reality. That's what he says about us. That's what they say about us. We deal in reality, and it's a reality that was created. Life is not the same as it used to be before the 1700s. If you think about history and how that all went. And there's a reason. There has been a very long Zionist agenda for a lot longer than people realize to get to this one world order, which why I was talking about it on this podcast so in depth, why I'm trying to say, Christians wouldn't want this, but Zionists do. Christians fight for people's sovereignty, and they would fight for yours. They don't want you to be surveilled. We believe in free will. Free will, God gives everyone free will, and you can choose to follow him or not. It's the same thing. We always would exercise, like say everyone deserves free will. Now, obviously, we also believe in justice. So if you're doing things that are not great, I mean, there's consequences for that. But just in general, that's not a Christian doctrine to want to control people, put them under a world order. No, that's not part of our moral code. So it just goes completely against everything we believe. Very interesting article on Substack by Dennis Kuknik, Iran, Epstein, and Human Sacrifice. Lord, I might need to look at that. I'm like, no, that sounds pretty interesting. I'm going to take a look at that, see if we have some similar conclusions. I just screenshotted it so I can try and remember it. Thank you for that. Okay, Linda said England favors Jewish national home, i.e. Jewish state. Yeah, I think they were the biggest backers of the state of Israel, if I remember correctly, whenever they came in 1948. They try and say we were, but I'm pretty sure it was actually them. Zero says a country whose constitution offers freedom of speech as an unalienable right that has been eroded as we speak in code. The concept monetization dictates our speech is unforgivable. It's so true. It's so true. It's sad that we have to all talk in code now. And I think there was a really big push to becoming more PC around the Black Lives Matter time. Do you guys remember that? I don't know why. I keep feeling like around that era, it got very strict. Now, Nick Fuentes says himself, I honestly did not realize this, how far back the word antiseptic goes. I'm obviously coding right now. It's in very old documents. in history. And that word has been thrown around to have people be quiet about any disagreements they have for a very long time. But when I found out how heavily censored Nick Fuentes was just as a young guy, like 18 years old, that really bothered me. And obviously we never found out about it until he's, his rise to fame. And like, in all honesty, good for him. He kept fighting the fight. I don't know if he's a Fed. I don't know anything about the guy, but it completely goes against our Constitution that we should be taking somebody off the air for just noticing things about places. And he said some harsh stuff. I don't know that I agree with him on everything, but I mean, one of our principles is supposed to be around just kind of you're able to say what you want, but freedom of speech has eroded so badly. Why U.S. attack Iran? 1, subservience to Israel and a Trump donor. 2, Epstein cover-up. 3, industrial military complex with taxpayer money. 4, pay back the millions from the Saudi gangster bin Salman. 5, world domination. They want to erode they want us to become more and more in debt to that banking cabal. We're how many trillions in debt due to all of these wars. Also weaken our economy, make it so all of our allies hate us. And so then we have less people to work with us. So it's actually kind of a humiliation ritual as well. Life is a pulp floor. It's not just so black and white and it's not what it seems. Yes to all of this, but it's even deeper. I didn't know Stu Peters was left-leaning at all. I follow Stu Peters as well, tied together with this war. I will check that out. I like Stu Peters. I typically only catch his clips, but I do like him. Thanks, Mike. So yeah. So I want to play something I saw on the Sean Ryan show. I thought this really interesting. It's about the conditions for the Antichrist. So I thought we could open that. This was a really good video, and it's odd. It's, just very timely.
Antichrist is just about present. When he appears, there has to be a unification of the worldwide economy.
What has happened that needed to happen, and what still needs to happen?
Before the Antichrist comes, one of the things that we know from the fathers of the church is that there will be a worldwide implosion of people's morality, which we've seen. So that's happened since the 1950s. There's been an implosion where people just aren't following the laws of God. The other part of it, again, is the unification of the worldwide economy. It has to be something that the people that are alive, in order to survive, you have to be able to plug into that economy in some fashion. That's why they talk about the mark of the beast. Well, we're almost there. They could literally just decide, look, unless you're going to sign off on certain things, you're not going to have access to the digital currency that we're going to enact worldwide, because that's how we could rule it. And that's how they'll be able to basically starve people out if they're unwilling to sign off on the Antichrist's rule. They say that the Antichrist will be so charismatic, unless a person has specific graces from God, you're going to easily get sucked into what he teaches and what he professes, which of course is going to be a rejection of Christ, and he will set himself up as the Messiah, but it'll be a political type of a thing. Once he shows up, the 2 prophets that are in heaven, Elijah and Enoch, have to return and preach against him. So those types of things have to happen before Christ actually returns and finally puts him to death.
Okay, so I just wanted to play that so everyone knew what some Christians believe what would actually happen as an end time prophecy. And it doesn't sound great for us. So I just wanted to really touch on the fact that like we would not be putting it out there. No one wants that if they believe in the end times. And this Catholic priest said it the best, or father, I think. I'm not Catholic, so I don't necessarily know how their ranks 100% go, but he was on Sean Ryan's show, and isn't that oddly timed that when everyone's talking about this political war being basically a holy war, then Sean Ryan has this Catholic priest on there to talk about what the conditions for an Antichrist are. I feel like a lot of this is trying to just put it in people's head. That's what this is, to warn people. But I also think some of it's like manipulation to try and get people to hate each other or believe things that like this could all be stopped. We literally could just put the arms down and walk away. I don't understand why it has to be some dramatic build up to this and this when if you were actually using logic and reason, which they never do. They will tell you they're using logic and reason. They get mad at you when you don't argue with them with logic and reason, but they never use it. When you see them make these decisions, I always feel like they're the dumbest people in the room, right? I don't know about you, but that's how I feel about these politicians. They're just a bunch of political theater people, dumbest people in the room, making the worst decisions. But it doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be some Christ is coming, Antichrist is coming, depending on what you believe. It could just be like, hey, let's make a deal with Iran and cut the shit. It doesn't have to be like this. The theatrics alone should make you wonder if you're being manipulated one way or another. You should really question that. Because if you're hearing from mainstream media that it's a holy war. We're helping the Zionists. We're building we want to build a new temple. And then you're hearing from Sean Ryan that it's the Antichrist. You're hearing all of these things and you're just like, it could just be a war as well. I just want to say that. It could also just be a war, and like probably a very bad one if Russia decides they want to get involved, because Putin does not play with this shit. Russia is still probably Zionism's biggest foe. They still are not 100% bought into that game. So it doesn't have to be any of this. We could literally stop right now what we're doing. And so if you're the praying type, I would urge you to pray for that. And if you're not, I would urge you to just talk to your neighbors and make sure the political temperature is down. I'm going to warn this in all of my lives up until whatever happens, but this kind of stuff is definitely heating up enough for civil war. And we've had a ton of people imported and who have immigrated over recently that are of different faiths than the Christian faith. And so, if people wanted a war, they could easily get one. They could get one between different religions. You get it between different sides of the government, left versus right. But quite frankly, the war is on the elites, and we need to keep that in mind. These are the people who want this. They make the money off of this. They go to their bunkers. They fly across wherever. Bibi left his own state, which is getting bombed to crap right now. So they're safe. And then they want other people to die in their weird rituals, which is war. And no one wants that stuff. So just remember, don't flick off the guy when you're driving. Just try and keep kindness in the front of your mind as long as possible, because honestly, the weirdest shit can set this kind of stuff off. And I just hope we can all still be kind and patient with one another and truly try not to heat up the temperature with our fellow Americans.